The first warning light blinked red long before the old dragon opened her eyes. Hidden sensors watched the ruined structure at the edge of the spaceport, tracking heat, movement, breath. Silent drones hovered far above the clouds, their lenses fixed on the same scene every morning. The system marked the hour. The subject was approaching again. Roland Moore walked slowly across the cracked landing field, careful not to make noise. Dawn had not fully arrived. The sky was still gray and thin, like it might tear open at any moment. He carried a metal cart filled with food packs, dried meat, and water canisters. The wheels squeaked and he winced every time they did. The ruin stood ahead of him, half buried in dust and old stone. Warning signs flickered along the walls in faded red letters. Restricted zone. Biohazard. Keep out. Roland ignored them as he always did. He stopped a safe distance away and waited. Inside the dark chamber, something huge shifted. Roland cleared his throat. "Morning," he said, his voice low and calm. "I brought more today." No answer came, only a slow breath that shook the ground. Then the old dragon's head emerged from the shadows. Her scales were dull silver, cracked in many places. One horn was broken, the other wrapped in old bandage cloth that Roland had tied weeks ago. Her eyes opened halfway, tired but alert. She did not attack him. She never did. Roland pushed the cart forward and placed the food on the ground, step by step. He always stayed where she could see him. He always kept his hands open. He had learned these rules on the first day, when fear nearly froze his heart in his chest. That first day he had thought he would die. Now, weeks later, fear was still there, but it was quieter. The dragon lowered her head and sniffed the food. Her movements were slow, careful, like every motion hurt. She ate without rushing, tearing the meat with worn teeth. Roland sat on a broken crate nearby and waited. Far above, unseen by either of them, alien operators watched the feed in silence. "This is the human again," one guard said, his voice sharp. "He violates perimeter law daily." Another voice replied, calm and cold. "He has done so for 43 cycles. No hostile action recorded." A third voice joined in. "Subject shows no signs of theft, threat, or coercion. Only delivery of resources." They watched as Roland poured fresh water into a wide metal tray. He wiped dirt from its edge with his sleeve before sliding it closer to the dragon. She paused, then dipped her head and drank. Roland smiled just a little. "You need more strength," he said softly. "The nights are getting colder." The dragon's eye shifted toward him. For a moment, something ancient moved behind that tired gaze. Roland felt it and lowered his eyes in respect. "I know," he added quickly. "I'll keep coming." Inside the control chamber light years away, several beings stiffened. "She understands him," one whispered. "Language recognition is inconclusive," another replied. "But attention markers are elevated." Back in the ruin, the dragon finished eating and rested her head against the stone floor. Her breathing slowed. Roland stood and carefully collected the empty packs. He never stayed long. He believed she needed rest more than company. As he turned to leave, a sudden sound echoed through the ruin. Metal scraped against stone. Roland froze. The dragon lifted her head slightly. A low sound came from her chest. Not a roar. A warning. Roland slowly stepped back, hands raised. "It's okay," he said. "I'm leaving." The sound stopped. The dragon watched him go. Outside, Roland pushed the cart back toward the city edge. His shoulders were tense until he reached the broken fence line. Only then did he breathe out. He did not know that legal councils were already debating his existence. He did not know that armed ships waited beyond normal space, weapons warm and ready. He only knew that an old creature was hungry every morning and no one else came. As Roland disappeared into the mist, the dragon closed her eyes again. Deep within her mind, something long silent stirred. And the watchers kept watching. The room of watchers was quiet but not calm. Screens floated in the air, showing the ruined structure from every angle. Heat scans, movement lines, and heart signals wrapped around the image of the old dragon and the small human who visited her each morning. The feeds replayed again and again, slowed, paused, studied. The dragon's name was spoken at last. "Velthrixa," said one of the tall figures, his skin dark blue, his eyes glowing with thin rings of light. "Confirmed by scale pattern and bone damage. There is no mistake." A ripple of tension moved through the chamber. "She is a living legal power," another voice said. "This one belonged to a thin being made of pale metal and light. Her contracts are older than most stars in this sector." "And she is starving," a third voice replied, low and sharp. "Hidden. Injured. Watched by a human scavenger." On the main screen, Roland Moore appeared again, walking away from the ruin, pushing his empty cart. He looked small against the broken buildings and wide sky. "He is not a scavenger," said a softer voice. All eyes turned. The speaker was a legal observer, a tall figure wrapped in long white fabric, covered in glowing symbols. "He has taken nothing. He has asked for nothing. He brings food, water, and leaves." "That does not remove the risk," the blue-skinned guard snapped. "Humans are unpredictable. Their history proves this." The observer lifted one long finger. "So does ours." Silence followed. The feed switched views, showing recorded moments from the past weeks. Roland cleaning blood from cracked scales. Roland wrapping cloth around the broken horn. Roland stepping back every time the dragon shifted, never reaching without permission. "He does not know who she is," the observer said. "That is clear." "And that is the problem," the guard replied. "Ignorance leads to accidents." Far away in the ruin, Velthrixa lay awake. Her body ached. Time pressed down on her like gravity. She had not moved far in many cycles. Every breath felt heavier than the last. Yet her mind was sharp. It always had been. She remembered wars. She remembered treaties written in fire and blood. She remembered when her name alone could stop fleets. Now she remembered footsteps. Human footsteps. She heard them long before he arrived. Soft, careful, always the same pace. Not a hunter's walk. Not a thief's. A walk filled with fear and choice. When Roland appeared at the edge of the ruin again that morning, the watchers reacted at once. "He returns," the guard said. "Permission to remove?" "No," the observer answered. "Continue observation." Roland approached just as before, cart rattling, breath steady but tense. He stopped at the same spot and waited. "Morning," he said. Velthrixa did not answer, but she watched. He placed the food down and backed away. Today there was less meat but more water. He had noticed her thirst. That detail did not go unseen. "He adapts," the observer said quietly. "That makes him more dangerous," the guard replied. Inside the ruin, Roland sat on the broken crate. He rubbed his hands together to warm them. The air was colder today. "You didn't finish everything yesterday," he said gently. "So I brought smaller pieces." Velthrixa lowered her head and ate. Her movements were still slow, but there was a little more strength in them now. Not much. Just enough. As she ate, she studied him. He was thin. His clothes were worn. His hands were rough and scarred, not from battle but from work. He smelled of metal dust and old engines. A survivor, not a warrior. She could kill him easily. She chose not to. The watchers noticed the pause in her movement. Several guards leaned forward. "She hesitates," one said. "Why?" "Because she is thinking," the observer replied. When Velthrixa finished, she did something she had not done before. She spoke. Her voice was low and rough, like stone grinding against stone. "Why?" The word echoed through the ruin. Roland froze. His heart slammed against his ribs. He swallowed hard. "Why do I come?" he asked, unsure if he had understood correctly. The dragon's eye fixed on him. "Yes." Far away, alarms lit up across the chamber. She spoke to him, someone said. "Audio confirmed," another replied. "Direct communication." The guard stepped forward. "That is enough. This has crossed." "Wait," the observer said sharply. Roland took a slow breath. He did not stand. He did not run. "Because," he said, voice shaking, "no one else does." The words were simple. Honest. Empty of fear and full of it at the same time. Velthrixa stared at him for a long moment. Then she rested her head back on the stone. That was all. Roland did not try to say more. He stood, gathered the empty packs, and backed away as usual. As he left, Velthrixa watched until he vanished from sight. In the chamber of watchers, silence returned, heavier than before. "This changes everything," the observer said. "Yes," the guard replied slowly. "It does." And in the shadows between stars, decisions began to move. Roland Moore walked toward the ruined chamber with the cart again, but this morning something felt different. The air was thicker, the wind sharper, carrying the smell of stone, dust, and old metal. He sensed it before he saw it, a quiet tension that had not been there before. Inside, Velthrixa stirred as he approached. Her eyes opened fully this time, revealing a sharp intelligence that seemed to weigh him, measure him, judge him. She shifted slightly, the sound of her massive bones echoing against the walls. "Morning," Roland said softly. "I brought your breakfast." She did not respond immediately. Instead, her gaze followed every movement he made as he placed the food down. He noticed the way her scales reflected the dim light, like silver broken glass, and he remembered how weak she had been when he first found her. Velthrixa lowered her head to the food, slowly, deliberately. Every movement was cautious. She was testing him. Rollin understood that instinctively. He had learned to respect her patience. "You don't have to do this," she said, her voice low and rough but clearer than ever. "I could end it all with a thought." Rollin froze. His hands hovered over the cart. "I know," he said, keeping his voice steady. "But I won't leave you alone. Not like the others." There was silence for a long moment. Then Velthrix's tail shifted slightly, thumping against the stone floor. She had not expected this. Most humans ran, screamed, or tried to take advantage. Rollin stayed. He stayed even when fear pressed against him like a heavy stone. The alien observers far away were watching everything in real time. "Notice his lack of aggression," one guard said, leaning closer to the screen. "No hostility, no fear-driven attack." "True," the observer replied. "And he does not seek reward. That is unusual for his species." Inside the ruin, Velthrixa studied him more closely. Her sharp mind calculated possibilities. She could strike, end this human's life in an instant. No one would know. But something in his calm, simple actions spoke louder than threats or force. "Why do you stay?" she asked again. Rollin swallowed, feeling the weight of her gaze. "Because no one should be left alone," he said. "Not when they cannot defend themselves. Not when no one cares." Velthrix's eyes narrowed. His words were foolish, weak, and impossible to ignore. He could not command armies. He could not wield magic older than stars. He had nothing, and yet he had everything in his choice. The watchers whispered among themselves. "This is remarkable," one said. "Subject's intent is clear." "She has never hesitated like this," another added. "Perhaps, respect?" Velthrix's body tensed. She had seen humans before. They were clever, yes, dangerous, yes, but rarely kind without reason. Rollin's presence, his choice to continue despite the danger, made her reconsider everything she believed about fragile species. "Most humans would flee," she said almost to herself. "I am not most humans," Rollin replied, sensing the unspoken words. Velthrix's massive head lowered, and she studied him more closely. Her claws dug slightly into the stone floor, but she did not strike. She could feel something in him that no weapon could touch: determination, courage, and a quiet kindness that was rare in her long existence. The alien guards tensed on the monitors. "This is not protocol," one said. "She is yielding." "Analyzing behavior patterns," the observer replied. "This human has passed a test no soldier or diplomat ever could." Rollin finished setting the food and stepped back, hands raised slightly. "I'll leave you to rest," he said. "You've earned it." Velthrixa considered him, weighing every small motion, every choice he had made. Then she did something she had never done in centuries. She allowed him to remain alive, to continue his simple acts of care, without threat or command. "You could leave now," she said, her voice like gravel and wind, "and never return. You would live." "I could," Rollin admitted. "But I won't. Not unless you wish me to." The dragon's eye glimmered. There was a pause so long it stretched the moment into eternity. Then she spoke, voice low but firm. "So be it. Stay then. Let us see how long your patience lasts." Rollin felt a small, quiet relief. He nodded, though she could not see it clearly. "I'll stay." Far across the galaxy, the council of alien watchers shifted uneasily in their seats. "Impossible," one muttered. "A human has influenced the dragon's decision." "She is testing him," the observer said. "And she is learning. His choice matters more than any command she could give." Inside the ruin, Rollin settled on a broken crate once more. Velthrixa rested her head on the cold stone, but this time she did not close her eyes fully. She watched him as he watched her, understanding that the quiet bond formed between them was stronger than fear or power. "You are not like the others," she said again almost quietly. "And you are not like the stories," Rollin said. "I thought you were just a legend. Scary, untouchable. But you're tired. And lonely. Like me, I suppose." Velthrixa considered this. She had not expected a human to speak so openly, so honestly. Most species bowed, bribed, or fled. But this one offered no fear, no false respect, only a simple human choice: care without expectation. The observers in the distant chamber leaned closer, speaking in low, urgent tones. "This is unprecedented. Behavior patterns do not account for this." "She will continue to watch him," another said. And he will continue. That is clear. Back in the ruin, Rollin stacked the empty food packs carefully, making sure nothing would hurt the dragon when she shifted in her sleep. He did not speak. He did not need to. Their shared silence held more meaning than words. Velthrix's eye lingered on him until he left the ruin, cart empty once more. Then she lowered her head fully, breathing slowly, thinking. A choice had been made today. A human had chosen compassion over fear, and she had recognized it. Somewhere far away, the Watchers recorded everything, noting the human's unusual influence on the dragon. For centuries, dragons had ruled with power and fear. Now, an unarmed, ordinary human had changed the rules. And Velthrixa understood something new. Sometimes the smallest choices carried the greatest weight. Rollin Moore walked away from the ruin that morning, unaware of the eyes and ships tracking him, unaware of the debates his simple decision had sparked. He only knew he had made a choice and that it had mattered. The dragon's gaze lingered on the empty space he had left, and in the quiet, the ancient mind stirred with an unfamiliar thought. Perhaps this human was different. Perhaps he was worthy. Rollin Moore did not expect company that morning. He pushed the cart across the cracked stones, boots crunching against broken tiles and dust. The sky was pale, the air cold, and the ruin waited silently as always. But when he reached the chamber, he stopped. 3 figures stood there, massive, alien, and armed. Their eyes glowed faintly, scanning him from head to toe. Behind them, a 4th figure hovered, tall and thin, robes of white and gold floating as if alive. Rollin froze, hands on the cart. "Who are you?" he asked. The tallest alien stepped forward, claws clicking against stone. "I am Commander Thrax," he said, voice deep and metallic. "We are here on behalf of Velthrixa." Rollin blinked. "On her behalf?" "Yes," Thrax said. "You are under observation for interaction with the matriarch dragon. We require your compliance." Rollin swallowed hard, glancing at the dragon. She lay on the stone, eyes half closed but aware. A small, almost imperceptible nod passed between them. The thin-robed figure spoke then. "You do not understand. You have been caring for a being of immense power. Velthrixa is not merely a dragon. She is the legal holder of fleets, territories, and treaties older than humanity itself." Rollin stared. He felt as if the air had thickened. I didn't know." "You did not need to," the observer said. "Your choice has been observed and analyzed. It has value far beyond this ruin. You could have taken her or run. You chose otherwise." Thrax stepped closer. "We are authorized to offer you wealth, protection, and status should you leave quietly. You will be safe, comfortable, and removed from danger." Rollin shook his head. "I don't want anything. I just want her to be safe." Velthrixa lifted her head slowly, her tired eyes meeting his. "He speaks the truth," she said, her voice low and strong. "No one has offered him reward, no one has asked him to care. Yet he did." The aliens glanced at each other. This was unexpected. None had anticipated a human would refuse power in favor of simple kindness. Thrax's claws flexed. "You understand that your actions could destabilize sectors, human. You are dealing with forces you cannot comprehend." Rollin swallowed. "I don't need to. I just feed her. That's all I do." The observer stepped forward. "That is precisely why you matter. Your actions are not driven by politics, greed, or fear. They are driven by empathy. A species capable of that deserves notice." Velthrixa slowly rose, her massive body casting shadows across the ruin. She flexed wings that had not flown in decades, stretching muscles stiff with age. "You have observed him long enough," she said. "You have learned his worth. And I have chosen to recognize it myself." Rollin took a step back, unsure if he had understood. "Chosen what?" "To protect him," Velthrixa said. "To name him my caretaker. To grant humanity recognition in a galaxy that has ignored it for too long." The aliens shifted. One hissed softly, almost fearful. "This is unprecedented. A human influencing dragon law." "Yes," Velthrixa replied. "And he did not ask for this. He did not bargain, threaten, or steal. He acted without thought of reward. This alone changes everything." Rollin's mind spun. He had never imagined such power, such consequence, could touch his small, quiet routine. I just wanted to help," he said, voice trembling. "And you have," Velthrixa said. "More than you can know. You have proven that the small, ordinary choices of humans can carry meaning beyond imagination. That is why I recognize you. That is why I recognize them." The observer bowed slightly. "We will update all relevant records." Your actions will be noted across fleets and sectors. Humanity will be seen because of your choice. Thrax's claws flexed again, but he did not move forward. Even he understood the weight of Velthrix's decision. Rollin looked at the dragon, feeling a mixture of awe and disbelief. I don't know what to say. You need not say anything, Velthrixa replied. Actions speak louder than words. You have acted. That is enough. Outside, the ruin seemed smaller, quieter, though the sky had brightened slightly. Rollin realized that nothing would ever be the same. His simple act of care, feeding a tired dragon each morning, had rippled across the galaxy. He had changed perception, policy, and power, all without seeking it. The aliens waited silently as Velthrixa lowered her head again, her massive frame settling into a careful rest. Rollin pushed the empty cart aside and approached her slowly, kneeling. I will stay, he said softly. If you want me to. Velthrix's eye focused on him, tired but approving. Yes, stay. Continue as you have. That will be your choice as it has always been. Your care is worth more than gold, fleets, or weapons. The observers recorded every word. They could not hide their surprise. A human had not only survived contact with a dragon of immeasurable power but had influenced her decisions through something they had not calculated: kindness. Rollin did not notice the distant fleets shifting in alert, the councils debating, the messages being sent to distant sectors. He only saw Velthrixa, resting and breathing steadily, safe for the moment. You have made the right choice, she said quietly. And now your species has a chance to be seen differently. I will make sure of that. Rollin nodded, understanding the weight without fully comprehending the scope. He stayed by her side just as he had every morning, setting food and water nearby. The silence between them was no longer empty, it was full of unspoken trust and recognition. Somewhere far away across the galaxy, alien eyes continued to watch. For the first time they did not only see the dragon. They saw a human who had chosen compassion over fear, who had acted without thought of gain, and in doing so had changed the rules for countless worlds. And in the quiet ruin Velthrixa exhaled, her massive chest rising and falling. She had waited centuries for something like this. A simple human making a choice that mattered more than power, more than law, more than fleets. Rollin did not know it yet, but he had become a symbol. A small human who had fed an aging dragon and, in doing so, had altered the course of the galaxy. The morning air was cold and thin when Rollin Moore walked toward the ruin, pushing his empty cart. The sky was pale gold, streaked with clouds that seemed to move slower than normal. Something felt different. The air itself carried a weight, a kind of quiet tension that pressed against him without harm. Inside, Velthrixa lifted her head as he approached. Her massive silver scales glinted faintly in the morning light. She stretched her wings slightly, muscles stiff but strong, and for the first time she did not hide her attention from him. Good morning, Rollin said softly, placing fresh water and food on the stone floor. He had done this hundreds of times, but today it felt important. Velthrixa lowered her head to drink. Her massive eyes scanned him as always, but now there was something new: recognition. A slow, deliberate understanding that he was not just a human who came every morning, but a human who mattered in ways far beyond her ruin. Outside, across the galaxy, communications channels buzzed with unexpected alerts. News of a human influencing Velthrixa had spread faster than any fleet could move. Reports of his care, his choice to act without fear or greed, had reached councils, legal chambers and military command posts on dozens of star systems. The human is remarkable, a council member said. He has gained her attention without weapons, without fleets, without bargaining. He has shown that compassion can carry weight across species. Unheard of, another replied. No species has ever influenced a dragon of this age and power through something so ordinary. Back in the ruin, Velthrixa shifted, lowering her head again but keeping her eye on Rollin. She had made a choice. She had named him her caretaker. She had decided that humanity, because of his actions, deserved recognition. Rollin wiped his hands on a cloth and glanced at her. I'll keep coming, he said simply. If you want me to. Velthrix's massive head tilted slightly. Yes, she rumbled. You will continue. Your choice is now part of something greater. In distant chambers, alien guards and legal observers watched the feed, unable to hide their astonishment. He refuses reward, one whispered. He refuses status, protection, and yet he has gained everything. Not everything, the observer replied. He has gained something greater: trust, recognition, the power to change perception. That day messages began to travel faster than light. Fleets paused their drills, governors stopped minor disputes, and scholars wrote reports. Everywhere humans were mentioned, their small, simple acts suddenly seen through a lens of possibility. They were not just weak, unpredictable creatures. They could act with courage, with reason, with care. They could influence dragons. Roland did not know any of this. He returned each morning to feed the dragon, to set food and water, to speak softly. His days were simple, his routine unchanged. Yet, every meal, every step, every act of care became part of a story that swept across stars. Velthrixa watched him closely. Her body was old, tired, and scarred, but her mind was alive in ways humans could not imagine. She thought of the galaxy, of fleets and treaties, of laws and warriors, and realized that this small human had already shifted something far larger than himself. "He is extraordinary," she murmured almost to herself. "Not for strength, not for knowledge, but for choice." Roland paused that morning as he set the tray of food. "You're stronger today," he said. "A little more awake." Velthrixa lowered her head slightly. "Yes. Because you choose to act," she said. The cameras floating across light years recorded every movement, every word. Analysts and scholars marveled. "Humans can shape events without fleets, without armies," one reported. "This changes everything. We must reconsider assumptions." The ripple reached distant planets. Humans who had been ignored, undervalued, even feared, suddenly found doors opening. Diplomatic channels, previously closed, now considered their species. Traders found respect. Explorers found attention. It was not sudden, not violent, but subtle, a shift in perception that would grow over cycles. And yet, for Roland, nothing had changed. He still pushed his cart each morning, still spoke softly, still respected Velthrix's space. His courage and kindness had not been calculated, they were instinctive, honest. Velthrixa rested her massive head on the floor as he approached. Her eyes glimmered faintly in the light. "You do not know the effect of your actions," she said quietly. "I know I care," Roland replied. "And that is enough for me." Velthrixa considered this. She had waited centuries for such simplicity to have meaning. The galaxy had long been ruled by power, by laws, by fear. But here, in this quiet ruin, a human had proven another truth, that small, deliberate acts could echo further than any weapon or command. "Then continue," she said. "You are humanity's example now, whether you wish it or not." Roland smiled faintly, unaware of the weight carried by his routine. He placed the food carefully, backed away, and stepped out of the ruin. The sun broke fully over the horizon, spilling pale gold across the broken stones. Outside, fleets paused. Governments adjusted. Scholars debated. And humans, for the first time in memory, were noticed not as weak creatures, but as beings capable of choice, courage, and compassion. Roland walked toward the edge of the ruin, feeling the wind in his hair and the cold against his skin. Behind him, Velthrixa settled back, massive and quiet. Between them, a bond had formed, unspoken but strong. Somewhere in the galaxy, decisions were being rewritten. Laws were reconsidered. And the story of a small human feeding a tired dragon began to travel faster than ships, faster than messages, reaching corners of space that had never noticed humanity before. Roland did not know the galaxy had changed. He only knew he would return tomorrow as he had every morning. He would push his cart, speak softly, and care for Velthrixa. And in that simple choice, the galaxy began to understand that humans were not defined by their size, their strength, or their fleets, but by their courage, their heart, and their ability to act when it mattered most. Velthrixa watched him disappear into the distance, and for the first time in centuries she felt hope not just for herself, but for the species that had chosen to care when it could have done nothing. And humanity, unnoticed for so long, finally began to be seen.